So let's get into it, right? How to make smarter offers using a deal analyzer. So put it simply, does the property make enough money to pay the bank? This is really going to be our only question. I mean, we can make this as complicated or as simple as we want. And the way that expertise goes is it typically starts where you have a very limited understanding, a very simple understanding. And then as you get a little bit meaty, in the middle of the road, you're pretty good at it, you're average, it becomes very complicated. But then when you get to expert level, it kind of simplifies back down to the basics again. So you'll notice that the most people who are the masters at things, like Warren Buffett, for example, Warren Buffett has a very simple philosophy for investing, and he's an expert, right? And people who are pretty good intermediate investors, they typically have a very complicated system or philosophy. And this is typically a sign that someone is about in the middle of their development. So you'll see that the more simple that someone can be, either they're a very big beginner or they are an expert. So I guess we'll see where I fall on that scale here today. But I want to put it simply. So does the property make enough money to pay the bank? So this is our foundational thought. And from here, we're going to branch out to answer this question. But the thing is, when we get overwhelmed, when I get into some of this stuff that can be a little bit more complex, just always calm down and bring yourself back to this question. Is this property going to make enough money to where I can pay my mortgage, pay the bank? And then from there, we're going to ask the question of returns and all that good stuff. How much money are we going to make based on our investment, all this stuff. And that's what we're going to get into now. So we're going to start with the internal metrics. And so I call these internal metrics because they are metrics that tell your team what you're looking for. So the internal people in the group, these are things that you most likely keep to yourself, not necessarily for keeping them close to the call or anything, but because investors don't really care. And these are more functional. They're not sexy, so to speak, right? They're not the sexy return metrics. These are the, am I going to be able to make this work? And these are the things we want to answer first. So first we have the DSCR, or debt service coverage ratio. And it's essentially the ratio from your net operational income to your debt service or your mortgage payment. So if we have a 1.0 DSCR, then we have exactly enough money to pay the bank. So if we have a $50,000 mortgage and we have a $50,000 NOI, then we have a 1.0 DSCR. So I hope that that makes it simple for you to understand. And we're going to break down what numbers to look for on the next slide. But right here, we're just going to give you a summary of what they are. So number 2 is the cap rate. So basically, cap rate is a measure of risk and also value. People leave out the risk part quite a bit because they think it's just a pricing metric. And it is, to some degree, very much a pricing metric, right? It's what people are willing to pay. But what people are willing to pay because of what, right? Because of their perceived risk of the market and the perceived value of the market. So it's important to not be synonymous by saying, or not putting low cap synonymous with bad, right? Low cap does not mean bad. Low cap can often mean not as risky. So let's say San Diego on the beach, right? San Diego on the beach, I think everyone here can agree that San Diego on the beach is going to be valuable for the end of time, right? Us as humans, we're naturally going to think, hey man, living on the beach in San Diego with pretty perfect weather, that's a pretty valuable spot to be. I think I can confidently say that in front of you guys, that San Diego beachfront property is probably always going to be low cap. Because San Diego's pretty cool. San Diego's a pretty great place. It's geographical intrinsic value. So there is intrinsic value in its location. So do not start to say that low cap rates are bad across the board. You would be very wrong, and you would be considering half the equation. And we're going to get into when you should be playing with low caps and when you should be playing with high caps and what strategies are appropriate for each. But right now, let's get into the other internal metrics. Number 3 is the break-even occupancy. So what can my occupancy fall to and me still be able to pay the bank back? This is our floor. It's really important for us to know this number, not only for us, but for our investors and for our team, because we know when is it absolutely the worst. And yes, San Diego is a 4 to 5 cap, Michael. That's absolutely correct. It's around that range. You even get into the 3s at times. So depending upon how well located it is, San Diego can actually drop to around a 3 cap. So it's very low, but it's historically low. And I'm going to talk about why that's important in a second. But back to break-even occupancy. So basically, my calculator is going to show you this on the summary page. So you're not even going to have to worry about calculating this. It's going to populate it for you. And this is amazing because now you know exactly what your worst case is. And it takes the fear out of it. Because if I know for a fact that I can drop 30% of my tenants and I'm still going to be fine, that makes me a lot more confident when I'm raising money. And also when I'm putting together my entire underwriting. Because I understand like, oh, wow, I can move forward on this deal. I have a lot of room to mess up, right? And we're going to make mistakes. That's the thing. So it's important to know your floor. How many mistakes can I actually make? Then number 4 is a very simple one. It is required equity. So basically, I need to know how much money I'm going to need to raise. How much money am I going to need to actually close this deal? That's something that you need to know. right? And you don't necessarily need to broadcast that. You just need to know that internally. And that's, hence the internal metrics. So now we're going to break down the actual formula and also what numbers we're looking for. And so this chart is actually the deal analyzer that I'm going to show you guys here in a second. It's cool because it actually lights up green when you're hitting the numbers you need to be hitting. So if you are scribbling down, remember 1.3, you can kind of relax a little bit because the deal analyzer is going to literally light up green. It's conditionally formatted to where if it's above a certain number, it turns green. If it's below, it turns red. So you'll know exactly if you're good or you're not good. We are looking for 1.3 or higher. And the reason for this is because that means we have 30% more profit than we need to pay the bank. So we have a 30% buffer. Our income or expenses can either increase or decrease to 30% and we're still fine, or a collective 30% and we're still fine. Basically, our NOI, we have a 30% buffer because NOI divided by the debt service or the mortgage payment, the amount that we need to service the debt is the debt service. Now we have the cap rate. So cap rate is NOI divided by purchase price. And that's why you could see that it would be considered a purely a pricing metric and a purely a value metric, but it's really not, because how do we determine what we pay for? Basically the risk or the quality. Think of a bicycle, right? If we're going to buy a bicycle, we're not only thinking about the value, we're thinking about, man, is that thing going to break in a year? Because those Target bikes, if you've ever bought a bike from Target, right? Those things are pretty cheap. It's great. You don't have to spend $1,000 that on like a nice bike, like a really nice bike. But the thing is that Target bike is going to be broken in about 6 months. So we're not going to pay as much for it, right? It's the same thing with buildings. And I think that that's a super important thing to keep in mind, that although these are big $1 million properties, it's economics, right? What are people willing to pay for things? Their trust in it and also their perceived value in it. And trust comes from risk. So this depends on your tactic. Like I said, don't demonize low cap rates, because look, we can do a yield play. And what a yield play is, we're concerned less with cash flow and more with sale price. And so the cap rate formula is inverse. So the relationship is inverse, right? If my cap rate is lower, my purchase price is higher. If my cap rate is higher, my purchase price is lower. If our cap rate stays low and we raise the NOI, well, guess what? We're going to see a big purchase price on the back end. So I have a partner who invests in LA. And what he does is he understands the rent control laws very, very well. And he has his own lawyer team. They come in and they understand the rent control laws. They know how to get the rents up and still abide by the laws. A lot of people don't want to deal with that. So they leave the rents where they are. But they know in LA, the cap rate's going to be around 4 to 5. As Michael said earlier, right? It's going to be around 4 to 5 in that Southern California area. It's going to be there for a very long time. So my partner, Mark, knows if I can navigate rent control and I can get those rents up and raise the income, that's going to raise the NOI. And if the cap rate stays low where I bought it at, then my purchase price is going to skyrocket up. And yeah, I might not cash flow in the interim, because if my cap rate is low, that means I'm paying a lot of money for a specific amount of profit. And so that means that my mortgage is going to be higher because I've paid a larger price. Therefore, the loan is bigger. Therefore, the mortgage is bigger. And therefore, the profit doesn't go as far in the interim. But the benefit is, on the back end, I can sell this thing for a large profit. And that's going to make up, and it's going to be a yield play. So you'll see in a second here, we'll talk about some external metrics, and you'll see that equity multiple is a big return. And so if you're a yield player, then you're going to be looking at the equity multiple, and you're not going to be looking at the cash on cash as much. But if you're a cash flow individual, which is pretty much the predominant base of individuals, because yield is more of a wealth preservation play and cash flow is more of a wealth creation play. So typically we're going to be seeing a lot of cash flow players, and that means that you're going to be wanting higher cap rates and a higher cash on cash return. So break-even occupancy. Again, what can your occupancy fall to and still pay the bank? And this, you just want some room here. There's no real set number. You're going to see what the numbers are, and it's just good to know where it is. It can inform your decision, of course. What if your break-even occupancy is 98%, right? Okay, I lose one guy one time and my property can't pay the bank. Well, maybe that's not a deal we do, right? So we want that to be some room. I would ideally want it to be in the 70s. That would be a good rim for me, because then I at least know, okay, I can lose about 30% of these people and I'm still going to be able to pay the bank. So then we have required equity. Again, simply put, how much money am I going to need to actually buy this thing? That's a good thing to know, don't you think? So now we got external metrics. Number one, the big cojones. Number one is the IRR. Everybody talks about IRR. It is probably the most accurate because it assumes the cash drag, which basically, to put super simply, I don't want to get into the weeds with IRR because it's just going to confuse everybody. And it honestly confuses me at times. But IRR is basically just the understanding that $15 today is not going to be worth $15 in the future, right? So it's taking into account that drag on the cash. And so that's why it's probably our best comparison metric. And it's the one that we're going to like really hone in on the most for the external metrics. We're going to keep everything in mind, of course, but I think I put the most weight and importance on the IRR. So the cash on cash, this is a very simple one. We're going to talk about what the actual formula is, but basically it's the cash on your cash invested, the cash you make annually on your cash that you invest. The average annual. And now so this is the reciprocal of IRR for me. This is my least important one because the average annual return, although it's a great comparison for real estate versus stocks, because stock average annuals, they go off average annuals often in like mutual funds, and they'll tell their people in their mutual funds, hey, our average annual is around 8%. Isn't that great? And we're like, yeah, that good for you, buddy. But we're going to be around 31% in real estate. And that's not entirely fair. And I understand that because we're selling this property on the sale year and we're going to have about 100% return that year in the sale year. And that's going to really weight our average. It's going to skew our average quite a bit because let's say we're at about 8% during the hold because we're only taking cash flow into account. But then we sell this thing and we're taking sale proceeds and the average cash flow. So the average annual on that sale year is going to boost your average annual. So this is a great external metric because we can advertise with that and we can tell our investors, hey man, you're invested in a mutual fund and you're getting 8%. Well, that's cute. We're going to get you 31. And yeah, so it's not entirely the most accurate, although it is somewhat accurate. And I would make the argument that it is fair to say our average annual because real estate, the benefit is the sale, right? We're buying an intrinsically valuable asset and we're going to be able to defer taxes on sale. So basically, the sales benefit real estate, it's a huge benefit. So I want to include it in my presentation because it's one of the overall strengths of real estate that we can sell this thing and make quite a bit of money on it and defer taxes. So number 4, equity multiple. So this is the multiplier of your equity or the cash that you have in the deal. So if you have a 2.0 equity multiple, you've doubled your money. So IRR, it's a great comparison, as I said earlier, and we're looking for about a 15% or higher. Now we have cash on cash, which is the annual cash flow divided by the cash invested. So again, we want around 8%, but it depends on our tactic. If we're a yield person, like my partner Mark in LA, we are not really going to pay too much attention to cash on cash because we're understanding that we're in this for the long haul, right? We don't really care about the current cash. We want the overall. So yeah, it depends on the yield of the cash flow play. So average annual, the average of the annual returns for all the years invested, right? So that's an important caveat is it's for all the years, including the sale or a refinance year, which does tend to skew this metric. But again, it's a benefit of real estate that we have the ability to skew this metric. So I think it's still fair. And we want about a 20% or higher return there. Equity multiple, super simple. 1.0, you got your money back. 2.0, you doubled your money. We're looking for about a 2.0 or higher. So we want to try to double these people's money in about the hold period. So typically I hold a property for about 5 years. And so my equity multiple is going to want to be 2.0. And my big, talking point is that, hey man, where else can you double your money in 5 years? And that's not including all the tax benefits. I'm not even including the fact that we get, the cost segregation every year and that you're probably not going to be paying taxes on your income while you're also doubling your money, right? So it's a pretty crazy investment. And that's like the importance of understanding how to put one of these deals together for people. Because if I can tell these people that they're going to double their money in the hold period, then they're going to be pretty excited. Okay, Matt, does EM equity multiple include cash on cash? Yes, it's all encompassing. It's essentially the multiple on your equity. So it's your overall equity made against your equity that you put in, and it's the multiple of that. So it includes everything. They're all interrelated. They're all basically looking at the same numbers in a different way. So think about it like this. If you have a kayak, you want to tell me 4 things about this kayak, right? The kayak is 12 inches wide. It's 14 inches long. It's 3 inches off the ground, right? We're talking about the same kayak, but we're giving 3 different angles on it. We're giving 3 different metrics or basically information points that we can use to understand it better. So now we understand the kayak better because we're getting different metrics for the kayak. So that's kind of how I would explain equity multiple and cash on cash. Yes, they're all encompassing, right? Because they're all talking about the same kayak or the same amount of money we're making. But the thing is, there are different angles on that. So one's talking about annual cash against cash, and one's talking about total equity against initial equity. So it's the same money, but it's looked at over a different time frame and over in a different way. So important documents. We have number 1, the T12, number 2, the rent roll, and number 3, the offering memorandum. And we're going to get into what each of these are. So we have the T12. So here's what a T12 looks like. And now only a T8 basically fits on this screen. So we are going to have to deal with this T8 here. But the thing is, and it's important that I included a T8 here because T12 means trailing 12 months. So it's the trailing 12 months of profit and loss. So here you see that we're getting a T8. So if a broker sends you a T3 or a T8, understand that they just mean the trailing 3 or 8 months, whatever that number is. They don't necessarily mean it's anything different. They're just talking about how many months it's giving you a profit and loss for. So don't get intimidated. I've had some people tell me, oh, I got a T3. What does that mean? I thought I was getting a T12. Is the world falling apart? Well, no, it's just meaning that the property is closer related, and it's a better picture of the property for the last 3 months because maybe something happened in the previous 9 that's not typical. So for example, what if they had some plumbing issues? Let me get back to this page. So if you have some plumbing issues for the last 9 months and there is a leak that's causing your water bill to be extremely high, but you fixed that about 4 months ago, so you want to give the person the T3 because most of the time your property doesn't have a massive leak. So the T3 is probably the most accurate data to look at, and that's kind of when they give you different stuff. And so this is going to really be the majority of the time we spend is in this T12. I'm going to open one up in a second that's color-coded, and we're going to go through how to put the T12 info into the deal analyzer, and we're going to show you what it all looks like. So here we have the rent roll, and this is what a rent roll looks like. It's talking about who is renting these units, and maybe I should have blocked out their names, but I'm assuming none of you guys know these people, so it should be fine. Who knows? So the status, right? You have if they're living in it currently, or if it's vacant, or unrented. So here we can see their vacancy rate, we can see the market rent for these units, and we can see the current rent for these units. So what are they getting right now, and what could they get? So we have $12.90 is what they could get, $12.50 is what they are getting. So basically from this, we can take oh, hey, maybe we can raise $40 a rent on unit 110. So that just gives us a little bit of things. That's my uncle. Yeah, Bailey, I'm sure that your uncle is maybe on here, man. You never know. I hope he isn't. But yeah, no worries. It's hilarious. So we can also see their lease dates. So when it's leased from and when it's leased to. And that gives us a good idea of when we can start that renovation plan or when we can finish it rather, because we know when the last person moved out. So we have some information there. But the main thing we want to know is the vacancy, how many units, the floor plan that they're on. So here we have like 2x2, 2x1, and then we have the square foot and the rents. So that's really what we're looking for there. And we'll break one down in a second. I just want to give you the overview first. So now we have the offering memorandum, and this is made by brokers. So I want to stress this like big time. Take this with a grain of salt, right? The broker's job is to sell you on this at the highest price so that they can make the most commission and they can, buy their new BMW. And no hate on brokers if anyone's a broker here, but typically brokers, it's literally their job to try to get you to pay the highest price. So of course they're going to sugarcoat it. They're going to give you the best possible angles. They're going to give you the best possible stuff. And it's not always the most, maybe don't take everything they say to heart, but definitely understand okay, where is the overall idea? Like, for example, this is a property in Austin, and this Oracle office, there's almost absolutely no reason for this being on there. It's pretty far away in actuality. This angle kind of makes it look like it's not a big deal. Here's the property. But I mean, Oracle's across the river. It's very far away. This is just a small example of how they're skewing it to make it look even ideal. But again, it's not really as nice as they make it sound. It doesn't mean that it's bad, but it doesn't mean that you should necessarily trust exactly what's on here. It's just going to give you good information about the units, the year it was built. It's going to give you some stuff about the way that it was built, right? Do they have, what kind of hot water system do they have? Stuff like that. So we've talked a lot about the science of underwriting. This is what I like to call the art of underwriting. So science meaning we're literally taking the numbers from the T12 and the rent roll, and we're going to plug them in. So it's a science in the sense that there is we're putting in data points and we're getting a calculation out of it. It's going to happen, right? It's science. But then we have assumptions here, which are us predicting the future or assuming the future. So essentially, this is where it becomes an art, because there's no real perfect way to do this, but we want to be as conservative as possible. So here are the 4 key assumptions. Number one would be the exit cap rate, or the reversion cap, as you'll hear it called in the industry. So if someone uses this big word of reversion cap, just understand they're just trying to be fancy. All they're really saying is, what cap rate am I going to sell this thing at? And essentially, it's really important, and we're going to show you why on the analyzer. We have 4 different scenarios that we can run at the same time on my deal analyzer. So you're able to see what exit cap rate can do to your deal, which is awesome. But basically, if you sell this property at a lower cap rate, then your sale price is going to be higher, which is going to make all of your returns way higher. So you want to be conservative on cap rate. And typically what I do for a rule of thumb on cap rate, exit cap rate, is 10 basis points per year. So 0.1 per year. So I'm holding the property for 5 years. It's going to go up 0.5, which means if I buy it at 5.5 cap and I hold it for 5 years, I'm anticipating I'm going to sell it at a 6 cap. And that's pretty conservative. So that's typically the rule of thumb for assuming the exit cap. And then we have the rent growth. So how much is the rent going to increase over our time of ownership on a yearly basis as a percent? So basically, the national average for rent growth is typically around 3%. And now you may be investing in a city that has very high rent growth over the past 5 years or 3 years. I would highly recommend you just stick to the average. Because, for example, like Austin, Texas, for the last 5 to 7 years has absolutely exploded as a city. That's where I invest. And the rent growth has been around 5 to 6% year over year, which is pretty amazing. But I don't want to assume that that's going to keep happening, right? Oh, yeah, we're just going to double the national average for the foreseeable future. I don't really think that's like a good assumption to make, right? So I'm going to assume that Austin's going to get worse during my ownership. Because if it's getting worse during my ownership and the deal still works, well, that means it's a very good deal, because even if everything works against me, it's still going to be okay. And that's really what we want to know. We want to know if the odds are stacked against us, are we still going to win? And that's when we do the deal. If the deal only works because Austin's an amazing market and the growth's insane, well, then we're getting lucky. And I don't want to get lucky because, that's just not sustainable, and it's not scalable either. You may get lucky once, you may get lucky twice, but you're not going to get lucky 10 times in a row. Eventually you're going to get slapped. And I don't want to be that guy. So I try to be as conservative as possible and assume that things are going to get worse, not better. Number 3, loss to lease and vacancy. So loss to lease is the difference between the rents that you have currently and the rents that you could get. So that current rent versus the market rent, the difference between those two is the loss to lease, and also the time it takes to get a current renter out because their lease is over, and clean their unit, make it ready for people to move into, and then secure a new tenant and move them in and get them paying. So there's always going to be about a 2-week gap there. So you're always going to have some loss to lease, but that's basically another point where loss to lease takes in, the little turnover period between tenants. And this is actually your biggest expense in multifamily pretty much, where you have this gap between renters moving out and then moving in. And that's why it actually becomes the best thing that you can do, is literally being a good person. So if you are a good person to your tenants, you treat them nicely, you give them good amenities, you're a good person, you run the building with them in mind as humans, and they move out less, your expenses are actually going to go way down, and it's a really good business move. So even though, some people say, oh yeah, to be rich and be a good in business, you have to, cut people out and be a bad person and be, their numbers on a spreadsheet, they're not people, blah, blah, blah. Well, you're actually going to have a very high loss to lease and a very big turnover. And that's typically going to be the biggest headache for you. So you're actually doing better off in business to be a good person. So that's a cool little thing just to note. I think that's important for everyone to understand. And then also vacancy. So how many people are going to be in your unit at one time? What's your vacancy? And I typically want to track this with the market average or the national average. So around 95% is what I typically stay at for my stabilized vacancy. My purchase vacancy is going to be a little bit different, because I have to raise rents and make improvements, and people may not like the new ownership and they may move out. So I want to assume that people are going to move out and not like the new ownership, because that could very well happen. And if I'm relying on that not to happen, then I put my destiny in other people's hands, and that's just a dangerous thing to do. Yeah, retention, Michael, that's very true. Tenant retention is the most important thing for me. If you have a good property that people want to live at and tell their friends about, then you're in a way better spot than, churning and burning tenants. Number 4, renovation schedule. So simply put, how quick are you going to be able to get your renovations off and get those new rents in? Sensitivity analysis. This is something that the deal analyzer is actually going to do for you, which is awesome. You're going to have 4 scenarios that you can run, and I'm going to show you the deal analyzer here in a second. But basically, we want to know best case. So here's a good example of what exit cap can do to your deal. So here's the best case, right? We're selling this thing at a 4.6 cap. That's a pretty great thing. Look, we're selling it for $16 million and we are getting a 2.8. So almost 3xing these people's money. You're almost going to triple your money if this happens. And the average annual return is around 25%. Now look what happens if we sell it for 6.1. Now we're making $4 million less on sale, and we are only 2xing instead of 3xing their money, and the average annual return dropped to 13%. So it's a huge difference. This exit cap rate is massively, massively important. So we have best case, we have worst case, and then we have somewhere in the middle, which is probably the one that we're going to focus on. And we're at 13 million, 17%, and just over doubling their money. So this is a really good thing to understand. Where's the market going to be? How much vacancy do you account for in year one by Matt? Matt, I typically am around 10% in year one. And the reason I say that is because to get a commercial loan from an agency, you're actually going to have 90% occupancy in order to even secure that loan. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are non-recourse government agency lenders, and they require 90% occupancy for you to actually, get a loan with them. So I want to assume the absolute worst case, which is that I'm only at 90. So I'm just barely qualifying for that loan. Because if it's better than that, then I'm going to be taking all that money as gravy, right? That's all sugar on top. Because I already assumed it was going to be worse. And if it's better, well, hallelujah, right? But if it's not, then I'm already prepared for it. So as a syndicator, how do you calculate your fees? How do you calculate your hurdles, your pref, your waterfall, and your equity split? So I'm going to calm down. I know there's a lot of lingo right there in a quick succession, but basically, so if you are a syndicator, which means that you're raising money from other people in order to buy these properties, so you're doing all the work, but you're raising money from outside sources. That's what I do. And so the way that you get compensated as a syndicator is number one from fees. Then you compensate your investors with things called a hurdle, a pref, or a waterfall. And these are all the same thing, but these are three different lingos for it. And I just wanted to put them all on the screen so that people don't get intimidated, because people get very intimidated by the word preferred rate of return or waterfall or hurdle. They all mean the same thing. Basically what it means is if we have a 8% preferred rate of return or a waterfall at 8% or a hurdle at 8%, basically what that means is, let's say we have $10,000 of annual cash flow. The investor is going to get the first $8,000 of that $10,000, and then we're going to split the remaining $2,000 based on our equity split. So based on if I own 50% of the deal and he owns 50% of the deal, he gets the first 8% from the pref, and he's going to get the first 8,000. Then we're going to split that last 2,000, 1,000, because it's 50-50 right there, right? So if you're tracking me there, that's how a pref works. It's that simple. Don't let people intimidate you with their, complicated waterfall structure and all this stuff. It's really just people trying to be overcomplicated. So fees are, there's a couple kind of fees. There is a fee on the front end called an acquisition fee. And this is probably the fairest fee in my opinion, because it is quite a bit of work to group everything together, to do all the due diligence, to get all the legal stuff together, to actually do the, find the deal, all that stuff. So there's an acquisition fee on purchase price. Typically is about 1 to 2% of the purchase price in a fee. And so you raise that from your equity partners, and then you take that as a fee personally, as active income, as the syndicator. Then there's also a asset management fee. So there's a 1% to 2% fee of gross income monthly or quarterly, whatever you decide. And that goes to the person for actually running the property, which again, I think is pretty fair because you're running the deal. You're doing quite a bit of work. You deserve to be compensated in some form. Then the fee that I do not charge and that I do not agree with, let me put a caveat here. If you don't charge an acquisition fee, then I am okay with you charging a disposition fee. But a disposition fee is the third kind of fee, and that is a fee on sale. So for me, if I'm going to charge on purchase, I don't also want to charge on sale. To me, then I start feeling like a mutual fund, and I don't want to be the guy who's feeing everybody. I want to get fees for actual hard work, which is putting the deal together, grouping all the moving parts into one thing. That definitely takes some work, and you deserve to be compensated. And then an asset management fee for running the deal on a monthly and quarterly basis and keeping it up to date and ensuring that everyone gets their money, right? I mean, you're doing a service, so you deserve to be compensated. But then if you're also going to charge a disposition fee on sale, that's where it kind of gets into a questionable thing. So equity split, the average typically is a 70-30, and the 30 goes to the GP or the general partnership. And that's you as the syndicator, the guy who's putting everything together, that's the GP. And then the LP or the limited partners is the investors. So they're the people who are bringing the money, but they don't do any work. They just bring the money and the GP does all the work. So typically that's about a 70-30 split. Omar, what kind of fee can be linked to performance that motivates the team to perform? So that would be an asset management fee, in my opinion. The more gross income that you produce on the property, the more fee this syndicator will get. So as you raise gross income, you ideally are raising NOI, which is raising overall returns. So in that sense, I think that the interests are aligned there. The other thing to motivate the team to perform, which is an absolutely amazing question, Omar, that's why a pref is so important, because that in itself is a motivator, because basically I don't get paid until I make the investors 8%. So I better do a good job because I'm not making any money until these people make 8%. So I better really perform. And that's why people like prefs so much as investors, because it aligns the interests of the general partnership and the limited partnership. This deal better make some returns. Otherwise, I'm not even going to see $1. And I think that that's a really important part of preferred rates of return. So again, how do you calculate all these things and move them around? How do I know if I can charge a 1% fee or a 2% fee? How do I know if I can get 30% equity or 50% equity? It all comes down to the returns. So if I can get someone a 15% IRR and double their money, well, then what equity allows me to get them that? So if I can basically, let me ask you guys this question, right? If I told you, hey, I'm going to triple your money in the next 5 years, you give me 100,000, it's going to turn into 300,000 in 5 short years, but you have to take 50% equity. Are you really going to care? Like 50% equity is arbitrary. It's about the return. It's literally whatever gets you there. Now, if you get 90% of the equity and you get that return, then that's fine too. I'll take 10%. That means it's not a very good deal. But ideally, if it's a really good deal and there's a lot of room, then I can have more equity because you're going to get that return. It all comes back to how much money is this person going to make, not the equity. The equity is arbitrary. It's essentially whatever equity gets them the return that they want, that's the equity you give them. So the key points before we get into a T12, we're going to get into the T12. We're going to show you how I break them down with my dyslexic brain. I color code things because I can't see. And it'll be, I think, helpful for everybody because it's such an easy way to look at these things. So we're going to, important documents, T12, OM, rent roll. To remind you guys, T12, trailing 12 months, the profit and loss for the last 12 months. The OM is the offering memorandum. It is the broker pitch deck. The broker is trying to sell you to buy the deal. They give you some info. The rent roll is the rents and the leases and the vacancy of the actual tenants. Then we have external metrics, the IRR and some of the returns on capital for investors. The internal metrics, the things that you need to take note of and watch. And then keep it simple. Do not get overwhelmed. Here is this T12. You can see what I've done here. Basically, what happens is you have income first and you have the rental revenue. And this is going to be, the gross rental revenue before the whole deduction. So deductions are basically vacancy, loss to lease, or concessions. So concessions are going to be, I give you 1 month free. How much money does that cost us? That's a concession. And so that's what's going to be here. Usually loss to lease is its own category. But as you'll come to know, brokers and people who keep track of their deals often do a very, very bad job of accounting, which is somewhat frustrating, but you're going to just have to learn how to deal with it and make it happen. So this is the prettiest T12 I could find because I wanted to make this as simple as possible for people. Typically T12s can get even worse than this. So I just warn you ahead of time. Bhavik Doshi. So you said, do you source most of your deals from brokers? Yes, I do personally. I'm not a big fan of the off market just because I simply don't know the best way to do it. A lot of these off market deals are owned by LLCs. And in order to pierce the LLC and figure out who owns that LLC and what their contact info is often very difficult for me to send a mailer to the correct address. Because if I send it to the apartment complex, right? Hey, I want to buy your apartment. Well, guess who lives there? Tenants, not the owner, right? The owner lives somewhere, maybe even out of state. And if he owns it with an LLC, it's really hard for me to find his information. And I could pay for a service like Reonomy and try to pierce that, but that's about $500 a month. And it's not always accurate. I'd say it's about 30% accurate. So for me, I just reach out to brokers. I have an extensive broker network at this point. I send them emails on a bi-weekly basis, and I try to keep in touch with them. I have a CRM of their contact info. I try to know their kids' names and when they have major events. And I say, hey, Bobby, how was Sally's soccer game last week? I hope they did well. And I'm building these personal relationships with this person so that they can, trust me and understand that I'm a real guy. And then, they're going to do business with people they like and know and trust, right? So I want to be someone that they know and like and trust. And that's basically my method for sourcing deals. So here, other income. This is where we're going to get income that's not from rent. So you'll see here we have fees, we have a vending machine, we have some bill back for utilities, and we have laundry revenue. So I've gone ahead and grouped the fees. As you can see, fee, and then late charge income. So this is a fee on late rent. So I've grouped that into fees, and I've gone over here and made a color coded to match sum total. So how you do this is you literally go in here and you click this cell, you go up to auto sum, and you just select the range. So I'm going to select down to N27 because that is the actual fees. And I just press enter here and it's going to pop out with this number. So I want to do that. And I just want to go through and make sure that I can see it clearly. Because if I want to, what am I going to do? Count this up with a calculator and do it real squinty. And then the numbers are going to blur because I'm dyslexic and it's going to go downhill real quick. So that's what I do. And so here, we've grouped utility, and these are unique items. So we've left them alone because they're going to go in their own line item. Laundry is different from pet and different from vending. These are all unique and need to be kept as such, not grouped. Whereas these are more grouped. They're all part of the same category. And then we're going to move down to expenses here. And expenses here, we have repair and maintenance. So anything with a repair and anything that they're maintaining. So electrical repair. And then we have something called cleaning. So they're maintaining the units by cleaning them. We have carpet cleaning. Again, you're maintaining the units. You have make ready stuff. So you're making the units ready to be maintained and repaired. So that's all in that category. Then we have a green here, which is utilities. This is probably the most obvious one. Water, electric, gas, some trash, pest. And we're going to group trash and pest under utilities here because that's technically can be considered a utility in some sense because you can bill back for those in some states. So I'm going to put them under utilities because of the fact that there is a potential to bill back depending upon where you are. Then we have admin in orange, which is basically, these basic things that are, administrative. So telephone, office expenses, the application processing, delivery fees, bank fees, general office supplies, things to keep the administration going. So we group those in and we've done the same total over here. Then we have these contract services. And this is anytime we're going to contract someone out to come and do a service on our property. So we have eviction fees. We're typically going to have to pay some sort of a contract, like a lawyer to come and evict these people. And there's a fee associated with that. So I went ahead and put that under contract services. License and permit fees. I'm assuming we're going to need to contract someone who has the capability to give us a license or a permit. Then landscaping. Of course, we're going to have a landscaping company contracted. And then legal and professional fees. This is, a lawyer that we're going to contract out and get. So it's also, he's providing a service. Then we have a marketing category here in this cyan color. So advertising, all of this is clearly marketing. And then we have some yellow here, which is payroll. And this is for me right now is probably the most high expense that I want to take a look at later. And I'll tell you why in a second. But basically, look, we have a manager salary here, 60. So this guy's making 70 grand a year to be a manager. It's a little high, not a big deal, but it's a little high. We should keep that in mind. Then we have this guy, lead maintenance salary. Guy's making 90 grand. The guy's making 90 grand a year. And he's got a counterpart that's making 70 and another counterpart that's making 60. So these people are making some pretty sweet money. And there's 3 of them. So, that's a little bit of an overpay for me. I'm definitely going to take a look at that. That seems high. So that's just what I'm doing here in this process. Yeah. Maintenance man balling. Exactly. This guy is absolutely balling as a maintenance man, which is an interesting thing. So I'm just taking mental notes as I go through this. What line items look a little bit absurd to me? And I think everyone can agree that $90,000 for a maintenance man, it kind of sticks out. So you'll see things like this and you'll make notes of them in your head. And you'll be like, maybe the payroll's a little high. And when we input this into the analyzer, we'll see it even more, but it's just good to take note. Then we've left real estate and insurance. They are separate because they're separate categories. They're their own line item. And so here are their totals. Taxes is an important thing to take note of because this is going to increase drastically because we're going to buy it for a much higher price. It's going to get reassessed and we're going to have new taxes. Omar Gonzalez. From here, you can plan what you can improve or reduce. Yes, so you can not necessarily plan, but take note of. We're going to be able to plan when we put these into the analyzer that I'm going to show you here in a second. I wanted to break down these T12s and how I look at them. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to take this data and put it into my analyzer. And that's where you can really obviously see what you can improve and what you can't improve. And so that's where we'll come up with those kind of things. So yeah, here we have the T12, and that's pretty much the T12. So now let's take a look at the rent roll, because that's the other important thing. So here's the rent roll. We have 3 basic types of units, and I wanted to highlight the units so that I knew what they were. We have a 2-bed here that's 1,121 square feet. It is market rent of $1,200, and they're currently renting for somewhere from around $1,000. So it's good for me just to highlight these and see. Then we also have a 1-bedroom option, 780 square feet. 870 market. They're renting at about 860. So that's out 850 to 860. Then we can scroll down here. We can see the other 3-bed. So there's 3 unit types, and I wanted to highlight them so I knew that there was just 3 different variations. So now we have this 3-bed that's at 1350, getting around 1300 right now. So just taking note that there's 3 unit types, and now the broker here has done a good job of summarizing, which is nice. Sometimes you won't get this and you just have to make a summary tab. Sometimes you will, and it's not a big deal. So here's what we're really going to look at this table. So we have a 1 bedroom, 1 bath. It's got 40 units, 35 are occupied. Here's the market rent. Here's the scheduled rent. This is great. We're going to input all of this in the calculator in a second. And I've gone ahead and made a table for the gross potential rent year 1, because I wanted to make sure that that I was able to make sure that we were able to know this number, right? Because they didn't give it to us. So Bailey says, when it says market rent, who determines the market rent? So that's an amazing question. The market rent is determined by like or comparable units in the market. So a building that's a 1975 build with an 870 square foot 1 bed. Well, let's go ahead and look for another building very close by that was built in the 1970s that has an 870 square foot or around 870 square foot 1 bed with similar amenities. So if you don't want to compare a 400 unit with 4 swimming pools and a nice gym, and they have a 900 square foot unit, to your no pool 50 unit building with a 600 square foot building square foot. Sorry. So you just want to go and find apartments that are very close and also very similar, and you want to see what they're getting. And since you have the same product, right, you can say, oh, I can get that too. All I got to do is copy what this person has. So that's really what it is, right? If the kid down the block is charging $1.50 for lemonade and you have a lemonade stand on your block and you're charging $1, well, maybe you walk down the block, you go and see that he's charging $1.50 and you say, maybe I can get $1.50 too. Maybe I should raise my prices. Or maybe it's because he has a better sign than you. Well, perfect. Now I'm going to improve my sign at my lemonade stand. Maybe that'll get me to $1.50. So you just play that game, and that's really all that it is. So we got Kaylin here. Are apartment.com accurate for comps? To a degree, yeah. I think it's a great starting point for sure. I don't think that it's bad. Apartments.com, if you scroll down, you'll actually see at the bottom of the listings, they have a lot of the information about like how many units, the amenities, and some of the fees that they charge. So that's a good place. But ideally, you want to run a CoStar report, and you can ask the broker for that. So every brokerage in a company that's worth their salt is probably going to have a CoStar subscription. So you're going to ask them, hey, can you run a CoStar report on the area so that I can get some comps? And hopefully they'll supply some comps for you too on the OM. But however, I would strongly suggest that you double check what comps they give you, because brokers are notorious for giving you really bad comps so that they can make it look like there's more meat on the bone than there really is. So look at their comps, ask for a CoStar report, check apartments.com, and just kind of double check and see what's around. And if you live in the area, what you can do is literally drive by and see ones that look like your building and go and apply to get a tour as a renter, as a pseudo renter. So you disguise yourself as a renter. And you say, hey, I want to tour the 1 bedroom. I'm thinking about renting. You go and you walk the unit and you say, these are nice floors you guys got. We don't have these floors. We have carpet. You guys have laminate. Maybe we should change to that. So then you ask the leasing agent, how much are these going for? And they're like, oh, they're going for $950. And you just go, mine are only going for $850. And we have the same stuff. So that's kind of another tactic if you're at the actual market. So this is the rent roll and the T12. I'm going to show you guys how to actually put this in the deal analyzer and then what the deal analyzer looks like. So here's the basic analysis tab. And basically, this is where you figure out, can I pay the bank? And so what we're going to do is we're going to take all the info from the T12 we just looked at, and we're going to put it in here. So we have the gross rent, and we're at 1.49. So I'm going to go back to the T12, and you can see here 1.491, right? It's the same number. We just take this number and we put it in this box, and we go down the list here, right? So we got the management fee. Okay, cool. We go back here and we see that, okay, what's the management fee? It's 62,492. Great. 62,492. It's that simple. So we just keep going down like that. And we get an overall OPEX ratio at 57%. And it gives us the cap rate that we purchased at. And that's pretty much what we're doing there. So we get the idea of the cap rate. We get to enter in the T12 here. And we get to see what we're at. And then also the most important number on this page is the debt service coverage ratio. So we're at 1.4, which is a great thing to be at, because remember we said 1.3. And so after we've just basically gone and plug and chugged the T12, we're going to go, and here's where the science comes in. So we're going to do some estimations, right, in some sense. Or really we're going to copy the expenses, because on this page, we just want to know if it's worth moving forward. So if we can't even pay the bank, then we don't want to move forward. So right now we just want to get everything down, and then we're going to make adjustments as we go through the detailed tabs here. But this is just where you start. So you might be wondering, why is this number so much bigger than this number? Well, we're going to take here the market rents that we saw from that rent roll. So I'll go back to it. And you have this orange panel right here. So all we did here was I took the monthly. So you can see, I'll even highlight the formula. We have the amount of units, because the gross potential rent is if everything's fully occupied and at market rent. So we've taken 40, the amount of units at full occupied status. We've times it by the market rate, so the full amount of money we could get for it. And then we've had that be our monthly. And then for yearly, all we did was times it by 12 because there's 12 months. And then we went down and did that with the other units. So we did 16 times this, 72 times this, and then we just summed it. And so the sum here is 1.73, or basically 1,713,000. So we simply take this number and we put it here for the new gross potential rent, because this is the rent if everything went as planned, we got the market, we got all that good stuff. So we're going to keep other income the same because we don't have enough information right now to know that we can raise it, because we haven't gone into depth. Again, this is just the beginning. We're answering the basic question. Should I even spend the next, minutes going through and doing the detailed analysis? We just want to know if it's even worth our time first. So that's what this page is all about. So we keep everything else the same other than the GPR, the gross potential rent. And we just basically plug everything else in. As you can see, the same numbers. And I'm just going to take a little note here. So again, this note thing, this category. So again, as I said earlier, my average, I'm in this market and I'm paying people $1,000 per door. And this guy's paying people $1,699 a door, almost $1,700. Well, then I can say, maybe I'll take a note of that. I can pay probably $700 less a door for these people. Probably just fire these guys and lower my expenses quite a bit. But for now, we're going to leave it just to see if it's worth going forward. Because worst case scenario, these are worst case scenario expenses pretty much. And I'm still at a 1.59. And as you can see, it went green because now we can go ahead, right? It's above 1.3. It's green. We got the green light. We can go to the next pages. So Omar asked a question: is this deal analyzer a tool you developed and may vary from sponsor to sponsor? So yes, I developed this myself. This is proprietary in some nature, and there's some things on the next page that I'm going to show you that are very unique to this one. And I'm actually going to give this all to you guys for free, just for showing up, because I appreciate you guys coming to the webinar. So we're going to put a link at the end of the presentation for a place to download this. And if you can't make it till the end, we're going to send you an email tomorrow with the actual download. So you can literally take this and use it as you wish. Totally. You guys can take it, get good at it. You can watch the replay of this and watch me go through it again so you can understand it. But yeah, I'm going to give you guys this. And I'm going to show you here in a second why you'll probably want this and why it's a lot different than other people's. So let's go. Now that we got the green light on this deal, I'm going to show you the tabs. So we have summary here. And this is, again, we're going to put the name and stuff in here. But once we fill out the rest of these tabs, the assumptions and the income and expenses, we're going to get this populated. You're the man. Yeah, of course, Weston. Of course, man. Thank you for showing up. That's the whole purpose. If you guys show up, I want to reward you guys because it means a lot when you guys show up to these webinars. It really helps me out and it gives me an opportunity to teach more people. So I appreciate you guys so much for coming and I want to reward you for doing so. So of course. So here is the year one operations. So we're going to be able to see the actual operations for year one. And this highlighted bar is super important. This is our break-even occupancy that we talked about. So I've gone ahead and inputted these, and I'll show you in a second. I've inputted all the information. And now we know if this thing drops 25% occupancy all the way to 75, I'm still going to be fine. I'm still going to be able to pay the bank. So that's a really good number to know. I feel very confident now when I talk to investors because I know that this is going to be the number. Then we can see the debt service coverage, which is 1.84 instead of 1.3, which is great. Our IRR, which is awesome. And then here's the really unique part again. So we have two unique things on this page, this and the break even. This is great because everybody wants to tell you how much you can make your LPs, your limited partners, but I want to know how much I can make as a GP to the dollar. And I want to know if I have partners on my GP, how much money are they going to make? So I can come in on the assumptions tab here and I'll show you. So we have a GP split. So we can split the LP equity, right? 70-30, let's say. But now we need to split that 30% amongst the GP partners. One guy's going to find the deal. One guy's going to raise the capital. One guy's going to put the deposit down. One person's going to guarantee the loan. So we need to give everyone percentage, and we want to know how much everyone's going to make. Because if they don't know how much they're going to make, how can we decide their percentage? But no one else lets you do this. So this deal analyzer lets you do it. And basically, this guy who has 50% of this deal, go back to the summary, he's going to make 114 the first year. and he's going to make almost 600,000 in 5 years. So he knows exactly how much he's going to make, and so do all his partners, which is a really, really cool feature. So here are these scenarios that I alluded to earlier. The reason I put this tab here is because most analyzers, what you're going to have to do is, if you want to change the scenario, you're going to have to go on every single page and change the numbers on every single page. And it's going to take you hours, and you're pretty much just going to be like, I don't even want to see the worst case, so I'm not going to take all the time to put it into all the different pages. So I consolidated it on one page. You put it all right here, super simple. And then if you want to change it, you simply toggle and you watch the returns change. So if you remember scenario, we were at 16%. This is my worst case scenario, and you can see what happens to my returns. So my worst case scenario, I'm still making these people 4% IRR, and I'm still going to give them 23% more money than they gave me. So it's not going to be great if everything goes against me, but I know that I still have a 76% break even. Worst case, these people are not going to be bankrupt, right? I'm not losing anyone's money, which is great. And then I can toggle here to my best case scenario, scenario 4, and I can go ahead and see my returns. And boom, I'm doubling everyone's money. I'm the hero now in the best case, right? And you can also see on the returns tab all the way here to the right, this is what the LPs tab. So this is what the people who invest with you, we can show them exactly what they're going to make with our return metrics, right? Doubling your money, 40% a year, 20% IRR, and then every year, what are you going to make to the dollar? And what are you going to make total? So now I can show up and I can tell this person, hey man, you're going to give me $100,000, and in 5 years, I'm going to turn it into $202,000. How does that sound? It's a pretty awesome situation. So Matt, does that account for economic and physical occupancy? Yes. So it's a total occupancy number. And the reason that there's no separation here is because I almost found it to be somewhat unnecessary to separate, because, for example, I'll show you the T12 here. If we can go up here, because I built this in mind for people looking at T12s, and often when you're looking at a T12, you're going to see a flat dollar amount from a vacancy perspective. Most of the time, I very seldom see economic vacancy as a separate line item. So I didn't want to make a separate line item and confuse everyone on my analyzer when they only are probably going to see it maybe once in a blue moon, are they going to see it separated. And it's pretty easy if it is separated to just get a total and then, make it into one category. So I figured most of the time it's going to benefit you to only have one category. There's going to be a very few occasions where economic is separate from physical. And we can also include economic as loss to lease if you want. You could incorporate that as the separation from the rent you expect to the rent you get. And I think that that's also a pretty fair way to do it. So you have free reign, right? All that really matters is this number right here, the deductions, going to be seen when you go to the effective rent, because the gross rent is theoretical, right? It's if everything goes perfectly right. So this is a theoretical number in a sense, because you're never going to be 100% occupied, and you're probably never going to have every rent perfect. So this is theoretical. We want to make sure that the most important thing is that this number is reflected and that we can see the effective rent, the literal actual rent that we're going to get. So I hope that answers your question, Matt. So here, let's go back to probably the most likely case, and I'm going to show you what you can change on this document. So we have the purchase price, obviously. We can change the acquisition fee, whatever percent we want to get. Then we can change all the loan assumptions, the interest rate, the LTV, blah, blah, blah. If we want to do a refinance, we can toggle here, click yes, and these will light up blue, and now it's going to propagate the refinance. Right now, we're going to leave it no. You're going to go back to black. Here is that stabilization assumption that I believe I got a question about. What is my stabilization assumption? So here I'm at 10 for my most likely case. My best case, I get lucky and we're immediately at market. My worst case, we're at 12 and we probably barely get a Bill, need to run, but please send me the email. Great stuff. Thank you, Bill, for coming. And yes, I will definitely send you the email. It'll be in your inbox tomorrow with the recording as well. So look forward to that. The sale assumptions. So we're also going to get, when are we going to sell this thing? And here's the cap rate number we were talking about earlier. So we're at 5.9. And you might ask, well, how do I get that number? Let's go back to the basic analysis. We're buying this thing on actuals at a 5.4. So we're holding this for 5 years, remember? And so 10 basis points a year is going to give us 0.5. So from 0.4 plus 0.5 is 5.9. So now we're at 5.9, and that's going to be our actual. Now, our worst case is, the floor falls out. We have a 7% cap rate. The market kind of goes crazy. And remember, when I selected, we're still making these people some money. So if they give me $100,000, in 5 years, they'll have $123,000. And so even when the market completely works against us, everything goes haywire, we get a horrible loan, we're very vacant, we're still going to not lose everyone's money. We're still going to make them some money. They're not going to be really, really happy, but at least we're not losing anyone's money. We're still making the money. And to me, that's a win. So Doshi, can you touch on the 90% occupancy for a Fannie loan once more? Of course. So in order to apply for a government agency loan, which is Fannie and Freddie, and the reason that those are important is because they're non-recourse. And what non-recourse means is that they're not going to come after your personal assets if the property goes south and you default. They're just going to come after the specific property. And the other sub-benefit of a non-recourse loan is that if you go to apply for a new loan, that non-recourse loan is not seen as a liability on your balance sheet. It's only seen as an asset. So that's an awesome benefit of non-recourse. And they will not actually, their requirements to give someone a loan is that the property must be at 90% occupancy, because they don't want to necessarily give you a small balance loan for a property that's extremely vacant, because that would mean that it's not stabilized and that it's potentially a risky thing for them. And of course, it's one of the most premier loans. So if you're going to get a 90%, if you're going to get a pretty vacant property, you're most likely going to have to go to a conduit lender. CMBS is a good place for that. Or you're going to have to go to a community bank, which is just your local bank, and you'll have to cross your fingers and hope they give you good terms. But a community bank will be recourse. A conduit lender like a CMBS will also be non-recourse, but they're going to hammer you on prepayment penalty. And I know I'm getting into the weeds here, so I apologize, but the prepayment penalty is essentially the amount that they're going to charge you if you sell your property before the term is up. So if you sell your property earlier than they want you to, if you do a conduit lender, a CMBS, they use yield maintenance. And man, I'm getting into the weeds here, so I apologize. But yield maintenance is essentially, they take the LIBOR rate and they use a very complicated calculus to where basically you have absolutely no idea what you're going to be charged as far as the prepayment penalty, which is unfortunate because it makes it really hard for you to anticipate, okay, how am I going to be penalized if I sell early, right? If you use a Fannie Mae, you're going to get a step down prepayment penalty, which means that if I sell in year one, I'm going to pay 5%. If I sell in year two, I'm going to pay 4%. If I sell in year three, I'm going to pay 3%. If I, and onward, it steps down all the way. And so that's really predictable. I know exactly what I'm going to pay. But on yield maintenance, they take the LIBOR rate on the day, and they have a very complicated calculus. I encourage you to look up yield maintenance calculus. It's a ridiculous formula that I don't understand, and that I don't even know if they understand it, but it makes them a lot of money on you. And so that's the issue. If you get a conduit lender, like a CMBS, you're going to actually probably not really know. You're going to have to hold it for the term, essentially. And the term is about 10 years. So here I'm selling this property at 5 years. You're probably going to have to hold it for 10, or you're going to have to make a significant profit to offset that prepayment penalty. So there is the weeds for you. I really went there. I know that probably lost a lot of people. I know Kaylin's lost. I apologize, man. But got to help you out. Thank you, my man. Of course, any way I can help out, just keep asking the questions. So yeah, here are the scenarios. Let me show you the other tabs. So we have sources and uses here, which are basically how much we're going to be paying as far as closing costs, fees, and reserves. We don't know enough information yet. This is going to be when we submit an LOI and we get to start inspecting and seeing things. Right now, we're just going to assume these basic flat numbers. So we have 1%, 1%, 1, and 2. We're going to leave it at 4 because that's basically the average. And the average is around 3 to 5. So I'm going to be 4, and I'm just going to keep it there because I don't have enough information. So I want to be conservative. And we can come back to this once we start really diving into the property. But here is the detailed income, and I think we got a question. Matt, do you prefer to offer a pref? When do you consider to offer it and when not to offer it when analyzing a deal? So this is a great question. I like to offer pref for the philosophical reason that it aligns my interests with the investors, which is ideal, right? Because if I win, they win, and if they win, I win. I think that's the best way to do it. But I consider a pref when the deal is going to need me to give them one. So let me show you an example here, actually. So let's actually take a look here. We have, well, we're going to have to go to the returns because it's about them. So here we have, they're getting an 8%. I want you to memorize these numbers, right? 16% IRR. They're going to get this per year. Now I'm going to change the pref, and you're going to watch what happens to the returns. So let's go back to the assumptions table. We're at 8%, right? I'm going to change this to 0. So now I'm not giving them a pref. Let's watch what happens to the returns. They've dropped to a 14.58 from a 16.1. So that's why I make them pref, right? Because I want to be above 15. So I want to give them a pref in order to get them above 15. And that's how I make my decisions. So if they're not making enough money here, well, then I need to give them more to get them over the line. And so that's where I would go back and I would say, okay, man, I guess I have to charge about an 8. And returns are now going to be over that 15 mark, and I'm going to be really happy with that. So that, Matt, is how I decide if I'm going to do a pref or not. But if worst case, I mean, I'd love to do a pref. That's my ideal. But yeah, that's how I decide. So detailed income is based on floor plan. If you go back to the rent roll, and I'll just do that really quickly, which is, so we have these 40 units. We took these numbers directly from this table, right? And we know that the market's 870, the current's 850. So we're going to go back here. You have the current at 854. You have the market 870, and we just copy that with all the floor plans. And that's going to come out here, give us a total, and it's going to come out on the cash flows tab, which I'll show you in a second. But here's the other income that we talked about. Remember the highlights from the T12? These are going to go right here. So fees, utility reimbursements, put those here, and we can estimate their growth at about 3%. And then we have the same kind of table, the OPEX table, which is very similar to the basic analysis. But here we can start to make a little bit of changes because we're more informed at this point, and we can actually copy the real estate taxes. So here we're going to have a table that allows us to know exactly what we're going to pay on taxes. So the tax rate in this county, I know this because I looked it up. I just Googled tax rate for Travis County or whatever county this is in. I think this one's actually in Fort Worth. So it's about 1.9. And so these will be available. Literally Google it. You'll find it, I promise. And you go to estimated value. We're paying $12 million if you remember from the assumptions table. And 90% of that value is going to be what the tax is. So 90% of appraised value. And that's going to give me 205. So it calculates it for me and it immediately puts it in here for me so I don't have to worry about it. Kaylin, are those returns you look at when determining purchase price? Yes, to an extent, right? So let's go back to the debt coverage and all that other stuff. So quickly, let's go ahead and see what happens if I pay $18 million for this property, just to be absurd, right? We remember those returns. Now look at, we're making negative returns here now that I'm way overpaying. So that does inform my decision on the payments, right? I obviously don't want to pay $18 million for this property. I'm going to be losing money at that price. So I'm going to go back to $12 million and we're going to get our returns back to where they should be. So that does inform my purchase price decision. Great question. Here is the current T12 and the market year one. So again, only real changes I made was repair and maintenance. They have $848 a unit. And so this is where it comes down to experience. I know my market really well because I've done deals here before and I understand it. And so I'm typically running my properties at $550 a door. And if you don't own a deal in the market, you can always go to local meetups or ask brokers what the averages are per unit. Most people know these numbers by heart. So I know I can run it at $550. They're at $848. So I'm going to conservatively say I'm still going to be over. I'm going to be at $700. That's still pretty good, right? So I'm going to put that here. Then payroll, like we said, I'm not paying that guy $90K a year. I think that's pretty ridiculous. So they went from $1,700. I'm going to put it at $1,400. And like I said, I can be at $1,000. I know I can be at $1,000, but I want to be conservative and keep it at 14 just because I want buffer. So that is that. And that is going to pop out to the cash flows page, which will show you the month-to-month breakdown, which is really cool. And all the way till you sell it. So you can see exactly what the property is going to make every single month. And then even when you sell it, you can see what you're going to buy it for, what you're going to sell it for. So we're going to sell it at $16 million, which is awesome. So we're going to see every single thing that we get to see here every single month. And this really helps us to make a good decision on the actual building. And we can predict rent growth here. I'm going to leave it at 3%, like I said, because that's national average. Loss to lease, we're at about 8 here, so that's pretty fair. And all things considered, that's solid. Then we can see the loan schedule. So this is important if you're getting an interest-only loan. So let me go back to assumptions tables, and I have an interest-only loan in this one, number 4. So let me go to number 4. And I'm going to go to my loan schedule. And you can see, look, I'm not paying principal for the first 3 years. So I need to know that, right? My monthly payment's only $24,000, but I need to know that at month 37, it turns into 38 instead of 24. So that's just a good thing to understand. Then I get finally to my returns and boom. So that is going to be the end of the deal analyzer. I'm going to stop it here and we're going to go into Q&A fully. I'll turn my video back on. So video. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm wired. I've been looking at that page for a little bit of time. So yeah, Q&A, open it up. Feel free to ask me some questions. I appreciate everybody staying on. And at this point, if what's his name? If Adam Adam, if you are in the chat, could you put the link to sign up for a free call with me and also a link to put in for the Deal Analyzer download? If you could put those short links in the chat now, that'd be awesome before everyone has to go to bed, because I know it's been a lot of math. So here is the free call. So if you guys sign up for a free call, basically we're going to talk for basically 30 minutes about anything that you could ever want to talk about with this document. I can walk you through it again, one-on-one, ask me any questions. And also we're going to have a Friday meeting. It's going to be like office hours, basically. So we're going to do the quarantine. That's what we're calling it. You'll see an email probably over the next couple of days. On Friday, we're going to have a Zoom call where we're going to meet for an hour. It's going to be, open format, and we're going to just workshop all different kinds of things. Any questions you could ever want to ask, you can ask me then. And also on the free call, totally free, 30 minutes. We can talk about, your 90-day plan. We can talk about, we're going to give you the deal analyzer. We can talk about that. Then here's also a link to download that analyzer. So you click on these links and they'll take you to pages, and you can actually download those things and sign up. Omar, so how many times do you need to run the deal on the analyzer? Kind of one time at the beginning, latter, after your due diligence, any other time? Okay, great question. So this is kind of an ever-evolving process, right? Number one, I want to know, is this even worth my time? So that's what the back of the napkin's for. That's stage one. If it passes that test, then I move it on to a pretty deep dive, and that deep dive should allow me to offer on the property. If it's a good deal, like right now, we just went through that deal, I would offer on this property. I would send an LOI in tonight. So if this was a deal that I was looking at, I would send an LOI on this tonight. I would get that out. And if they came back with some PSA stuff, and we signed a PSA, a purchase of sale, and then I went out and I did my unit walks, then I would come back and I would inform my decision on the renovation schedule. Because now that I've walked the units, I know that, okay, we need new appliances in every unit. That's going to cost me $2,000 a unit. There's 128 units, 2,000 times 128. Boom, I know my renovation costs. So now I can plug those in, see how that changes everything. And then maybe I go and I find some negative stuff out. So maybe they have to pay the person $90,000 because the tenants are horrible and they're getting like stabbed or something crazy. And so in order to keep people on payroll, they have to pay them 90 grand. So now my expenses are actually going to be that high. Well, that changes my stuff too. So I go back, I evaluate, and I just keep doing this process. I get new information, I come back, okay, now I can change this. Does this change the whole deal? Is it still good? Okay, cool. And it's kind of like, it's an iterative process. So you keep going through it. But yeah, great question, Omar. Kaylin, what are some good example templates when first talking to brokers? I've been having some trouble getting them text back. Yeah, so I actually have some broker scripts, Kaylin. And if you sign up for a free call, I'll actually give you the broker scripts, the exact ones I use. And that goes for anyone in the call. So if you have a hard time getting brokers to text you back, this is the most common thing ever. And I definitely experienced this at 20. I mean, I look 20, right? There's no getting around it. And brokers would never take me seriously. So I've designed some scripts that work every single time pretty much. And if you sign up for a free call, I'll give them to you, but I'll also break them down right now because I don't want to be the guy that says, oh, well, you got to sign up for this to get this. Well, no, let me actually get into it a little bit here. Basically, you want to start out with giving them value first. So you want to, number one, tell them your criteria and be concise. Prove that you're someone who can close, because the value you can give them is closing on a deal and getting them commission. So you don't want to come from a place of hesitancy, and you want to come from a place of knowing the lingo. So you want to understand, hey, like for me, I know I just gave you guys my criteria really. Look, I'm looking for 15 or above IRR. I'm looking for Austin, Texas. I'm looking for 1975 build plus. I'm looking for 50 units and above, and I want them in East Austin. Okay, great. That guy knows that I'm serious because that's specific as can be. That guy doesn't think, I'm not like, oh yeah, I'm looking for some deals. They're going to be like, oh yeah, you and everybody else, buddy, I get 100 emails a day. So you got to be specific and you got to stand out and know exactly what you're going to say about your stuff. Omar, in a situation such as COVID, you review this analysis and assumptions and adjust the returns. Absolutely. So the thing with COVID, the big assumptions on COVID would be rent growth being negative or zero. So I had 3% rent growth in there. I would suggest probably putting 0 in there because I don't really think rents are going to go up with all of this nonsense. Also the vacancy. So I had a stabilizing vacancy in 12 months from 10 to 5. I would probably make that stay at 10% for the whole year, just because I think vacancy is going to fluctuate with COVID and unemployment. So I would assume those things. And also I would probably be even more conservative with my exit cap rate. So I know I said 10 basis points a year, which is pretty conservative, but with COVID, I'm not sure markets are going to withstand this for the long term. So depending upon my hold period, I'm holding for 5 years here. So we may be able to get out of it in 5 years. So maybe I keep it somewhat similar, but I want to take into account rent growth. I want to take into account vacancy, and I want to take into account exit cap, and I want to maybe make them worse because I don't know how COVID's going to do. And that's where the art comes in, Omar, because, for me to sit here and tell you I know what's going to happen with this COVID stuff would be a lie. I can only assume the worst and then, go from there. So Jim Farmer, does IRR take depreciation and cost seg into the calculation? So I don't believe that it does, because IRR is essentially, it's the internal rate of return. It definitely does not take, I know for a fact, I don't know why I gave you the half answer. It does not take into tax into occasion, because taxes are not taken in on any of these calculations. And that's a huge selling point for us, because these are numbers not even considering that you're saving a bunch of tax. So the reason that we can't calculate the depreciation and cost seg into an IRR, Jim, is because everybody's in a different tax bracket, and those depreciation gains or losses for them are going to be very different per person. And so they'll find that out in a form called a K1. A K1 is a form from the IRS that gives you your depreciation and cost seg and stuff like that. And depending upon that person's tax bracket and their involvement, they're going to have a different depreciation. So I wouldn't be able to give them a standardized metric. So I can't include that. But basically, if they're materially participating in an active investor, an active real estate professional and everything like that, they're going to get much different tax benefits than the guy who's a doctor, W-2, he's in a very high tax bracket and he's not active in the deal. They're going to get taxed differently. So I can't give a flat metric for that. So they're not included. Maya Allen, I am a broker in NYC. So the better I know how to use this, I can certainly be on board. Yeah, I appreciate you. A well-informed broker is everyone's best friend. So everybody reach out to Maya. If she's going to be a well-informed broker on the numbers, she's going to be someone everybody here wants to work with. So if you're in NYC and you need a broker, I would highly suggest reaching out to Maya, because she's in here trying to learn the numbers, which very few brokers do. I know a lot of brokers they're salesmen, honestly. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's a good profession to be a salesman, but you'd ideally want them to know the numbers pretty well, because they're selling an investment. They're not just selling, a thing. So awesome, Maya. I'm super happy you're here, and I hope everyone reaches out to you, because that's so cool that you're here. Kaylin, how did you become so proficient in learning the lingo? Was it a podcast? So this is a funny question, because there is no magic pill, unfortunately. I did nothing for about 8 to 9 months other than read all day, literally from 4:30 in the morning to 10 p.m. at night, read, listened to podcasts, analyzed deals, did nothing else. Because I don't know if you know my story, but basically when I was 20 years old, I decided to drop out of UC Davis. I was studying neuroscience and I was playing Division I soccer out there. And I decided that, real estate was going to be my future, because I could control my time. And if I could understand this thing, then I would be able to really control my life, right? Because real estate's so powerful. If I can just understand it, then I can master my life. And so I dedicated my life for literally almost a year to doing nothing but this. And I think you guys can tell, because I'm not even thinking, I'm just saying things that come into my head because I know it so well. And so you have to dedicate yourself to a ridiculous level in order to really know the lingo on a big level. So I hope that helps. I'm sorry it's not a great answer. A podcast I'd recommend would be shameless plug, my podcast, the Own Your Time podcast. I think it's a great podcast. And then also you have people like Michael Blanc, Joe Fairless. Those are great podcasts as well. Omar, how long did it take to run a full analysis? You do it in 5 minutes, but for a beginner. So I don't actually do it in 5 minutes. I already filled this out before. For a beginner, it should probably take about 45 minutes. For me, I've gotten it to a point where I can do it in about 25 minutes or 30 minutes, but that's really not the benefit. When you get more experienced, it's not that you can plug the numbers in faster. It's that I can see an OM, like an offering memorandum, and say, yeah, that's not going to happen, because I've seen so many offering memorandums that I don't even need to start the analysis, because I know it's not going to be a good deal. Like, for example, I was in a call with some people the other day. They were showing me a deal in Philadelphia. It was a student housing deal. And so they were telling me all these things about their business plan to change it from a student housing to a non-student housing, and get a loan based on non-student housing. But the thing is, you can't get a loan from Fannie and Freddie if you have more than 20% students in your property. And their business plan was to literally just stop renting to students. They're in a college area. And I told them, like, dude, you can't discriminate against students. You can't just say, oh yeah, you're a student, can't rent here. That's like saying that, oh, you're not a white guy, you can't rent here. It's the same level of scrutiny and discrimination. So you can't do that. It's illegal. So they can't stop renting to students and change their property. If it's right near a university, it's going to have more than 20% students. You can't do anything about it. You can't change your business plan. So of course, I'm not going to waste my time entering that into a calculator. So that's kind of the benefit of being advanced, is you stop needing to enter it in at all. Matt, do you have any upcoming webinars on raising money? So we just had one last week on Tuesday. If you sign up for a free call, I'll give you all the stuff that I gave everybody last week, which was my pitch deck and the psychology behind raising money. And to briefly go into it right now, Matt, basically when you perceive an individual, you're perceiving them in your amygdala. You're the fear center of your brain. It's an older part of your brain, because my first inclination is to understand, is Matt going to kill me? Like honestly, our brain's old. So that's my first thought is Matt dangerous? And once you establish that you're a safe person for me, then basically I can move into my prefrontal cortex. So my blood flow can come into the front of my brain, and now I can perceive numbers and data. So people start their pitches with how much money someone can make, but they literally physically cannot perceive money yet. They can't perceive numbers or integers. They can only perceive emotional stories. So we start the pitch with stories, and then we move into numbers later. And that's kind of the philosophy behind it. And again, if you sign up for a call, Matt, I will send you the full pitch deck. We can sit down for 30 minutes and I can really dive into the presentation, because I know you missed that one, but I'd love to still give you all the value. So Kaylin, that's perfect, man. Thanks. Victor, opening deal analyzer gives an Excel warning reference, circular references. Is this a problem or not? No, Victor, this is not a problem. The circular reference is actually in the loan assumptions. I mean, not in the loan, in the loan schedule. And I've already fixed it. The box doesn't go away and it doesn't change the numbers. It's just a calculation. When you're weaving together a bunch of calculations, there often becomes a circular reference. It's in the refinance to the original loan principle. It's really minute, doesn't change the deal. It doesn't change the numbers, but it does trigger Excel. So people a lot smarter than me maybe could fix that. But again, it doesn't affect the returns, doesn't affect the spreadsheet at all. It's just an aesthetic thing, the hindrance aesthetically, unfortunately at this point. But yeah, it's not a problem. Omar, I want to learn more about underwriting. Do you know of any resource I can check, a book, online training? So yeah, Omar, I would love to sit down with you for a free call. If you schedule one, I would take as much time as I could with you. And also I have a mentorship program where I teach everybody literally everything I know about real estate from start to finish. It's about a year-long program. We can condense it whatever you want. We talk a lot about underwriting. So yeah, that would be probably the best place. There's no real books on underwriting. Unfortunately, you just have to talk to someone who knows how to do it and do it yourself. That's really how underwriting gets learned. I wish there was a great book, but there really isn't. How can I know of your future webinars? So if you're in this webinar, you're now going to be on our email list, and we're going to be sending you emails on the webinar schedule. Next Tuesday, we'll have another webinar on how to find deals. So that's going to be a lot about how to find deals, because now we know how to analyze one, but how are we going to go and find one? So that's going to be next week. And so you'll get an email. I think you'll hopefully get an email at least today, and then maybe even tomorrow and Friday. So you won't miss it. You'll now on the email list, so you hopefully won't miss it. Maya, my email for NYC, Maya@MaileyHomes. Fantastic. Yeah, please send me an email after this, Maya. I'd love to just get to talk to you a little bit. My email is kyle@kylemarcotte.com. So kyle@kylemarcotte.com. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you. That's so cool that you're a broker and you're in here. So yeah, Doshi again, what is your biggest pain point when analyzing deals? Biggest pain point, man, it's really bad. Send me your email, Kaylin. It's in the chat box. You can just copy and paste it right here into your thing and send her an email if you'd like. But Doshi, so pain point for me is bad accounting. If you look at that T12, that was the best one I could find, and it took me a while to find it. Oftentimes, you'll just have people who put things in the wrong categories, or the categories are just not labeled well. So you have a hard time understanding where they got those numbers, and you have a hard time breaking them out. And when you can't really break them out, you get the totals right, but you don't know where you can improve the property fully because you don't know what line item it belongs under. You just see a total expense and you're like, well, did that come from payroll? Did that come from utilities? Did that come from et cetera? So that's probably my biggest pain point. And there's nothing you can really do about that other than ask a lot of questions and do the best you can. So let me open up the Q&A. This was a while ago. I didn't see the Q&A. Brandon's asking a bunch of questions on Q&A. I apologize. So what are you using to get the market rent rates? And I already answered this, so that's fine. Seems as though I've answered this. When you submit the LOI so quickly, how do you know you can raise that much money and close a deal? Well, ideally, Brandon, if you're still on the call, I apologize for being late here. You are going to be able to, yeah, thank you for putting my emails in there, Adam. So when you submit the LOI, you should be raising capital the whole time. So that's what the last webinar was about. And I'd be happy to talk to you guys about that if you sign up for a free call. Basically, we can talk about how to raise capital the whole time, because legally you need a pre-existing relationship anyways. So if you have a pre-existing relationship with this person, you need to be talking to them the whole time. So that's, and we're talking about how to follow up with people, how to get them ready for a deal that you're going to do by showing them a mock deal presentation. And we get into that in quite some detail as well. So again, it's a great resource, the free call. I really hope that you guys take it up on it. It's definitely a good good thing. I'd love to help you guys out if I can. So let's see, any more questions? Yeah, I'm just scrolling through here. Brandon asked these quite a bit ago, so I'm just gonna hopefully, if Brandon, if you're still here and you want to ask these questions, could you just put them in the chat? I apologize, I was looking at the chat box mostly. So Omar, this has been a great webinar, Kyle, full of great information, easy to understand. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for coming, Omar. I really hope that we can get in contact after this. I'd love to talk to you more. And thank you for asking great questions. It makes the webinar really fun when people are asking really good questions. So thank you. Kyle, thank you for your content. Great value, great content. I have to run. Thank you, Matt. You asked a bunch of great questions as well. I appreciate you. So Brandon, yeah, you 8:18 p.m. on your cash flow tab, when you calculate the equity cash flow, is that cash flow with LP and GP before the 50% split? Yeah, wait, man, you're brilliant. Sorry, Brandon, I'm gonna get back to you. I'm getting this flying in. I have to scroll back up. So you 8:18 p.m. on your cash flow tab, when you calculate the equity cash flow, is that cash flow with the LP and GP before the 50% split? Equity, yes. So it's the total equity in the deal's cash flow. Ideally, the equity is mostly coming from the LP. There may be some coming from the GP, but essentially it's the total equity cash flow. So it's everyone considered, yes. One new message. Thank you. Have to sign up. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I really appreciate you guys. And I'm going to give you guys a couple more minutes to ask some questions. It seems like people are signing off now. But if not, yeah, you guys, I'll give you till like 8:30 to ask some questions, so 4 minutes. If not, then we can end it. But yeah, let's just give it a couple more minutes for you guys to ask some questions. I really appreciate you guys showing up. And if you're still on the call, again, I hope you guys take us up on those resources. We'd love to give you the free deal analyzer. I think that's just awesome. Favorite podcast, again, Galen, I'm going to give you a shameless plug. Own Your Time podcast, Kyle Marcotte on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere you listen to podcasts. But yeah, also I would say probably favorite podcast other than my own would probably be the Target Market Insights by John Kasman. I think John Kasman's an absolutely brilliant guy. I got the opportunity to go on that podcast last week, and John is an amazing individual, really humble guy, great family man, great content. And he's just got a great voice for radio. Like he's just got that thick voice that's easy to listen to. So great podcast as well. Appreciate the webinar and content. Yeah, thank you so much for asking great questions. I appreciate everybody so much for being here. I can't even tell you guys how fun it is to be able to engage with people like this and for people to actually care about what I'm saying. It's pretty fun. Brandon, thanks for clarifying, Kyle. Loved it. Helps a ton. You're providing so much value. Can't thank you enough. Yeah, thank you guys. And yeah, here's a link to my podcast. Adam is on it today. Thank you so much, Adam. I appreciate you, man. So there is the link to my podcast. I believe he just made that short link on the fly, so I appreciate that. Very cool. So yeah, who's Adam? Adam is one of my team members at Team Kyle Marcotte. Really cool guy. He's 19. He actually dropped out of Davis as well. Really smart, hardworking guy. Doesn't get paid enough. Yeah. That's the joke. No, but honestly, you don't get paid enough, Adam, and we got to talk about that. So you're doing a really amazing job. Adam is one of my team members. He is pretty much head of marketing, does a lot of the marketing stuff, and is just a really cool guy, awesome guy. Talk to you soon. Yeah, of course. Okay, guys, I think that's the question. So I'm going to go ahead and end this. Thank you so much for coming. It's been an amazing time. I really appreciate it. I hope this was valuable. And yeah, really appreciate you guys.